Facebook mom named Karen thought she could outsmart Judge Judy with her constitutional knowledge, but what happened next shocked the entire courtroom and broke the internet. Karen walked into that courtroom with her phone full of screenshots, her head full of constitutional quotes she'd memorized from social media, and her mouth ready to school one of America's most legendary judges. She had no idea she was about to become the most humiliated person on television. But here's what nobody knew, what the cameras didn't show at first, what made this moment absolutely explosive. Karen wasn't just any Facebook mom. She was the leader of a massive online group called Constitutional Patriots United, with over 50,000 followers who hung on her every word about legal rights and government overreach. For 3 years, she'd been posting daily about constitutional law, giving legal advice to thousands of people and positioning herself as an expert. Her followers called her Constitutional Karen and treated her like a legal guru. She'd built an entire online empire around her supposed expertise. Before we dive into this incredible case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are around the world. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. The case seemed simple enough. A neighbor dispute over a fence. Karen versus her elderly neighbor Mrs. Patterson over 2 feet of property line. But Karen had turned it into a constitutional crisis on her Facebook page, claiming government tyranny, property rights violations, and illegal seizure. Her followers were watching. The media was watching. Karen's reputation as a constitutional expert was on the line. She walked into Judge Judy's courtroom that day wearing her "Don't Tread on Me" t-shirt, clutching a folder thick with printed Facebook posts and constitutional quotes, absolutely convinced she was about to educate America's most famous judge on the law. The confidence radiating from her face was blinding. She actually believed she knew more about constitutional law than Judge Judy. But Judge Judy had done her homework. The cameras were rolling. Millions of viewers were tuned in. And what happened in the next 20 minutes didn't just destroy Karen's case. It destroyed her entire online persona, shattered her credibility, and created the most viral courtroom moment in television history. The woman who thought she was a constitutional scholar was about to learn the difference between Facebook education and real legal expertise. And the lesson was going to be brutal, public, and absolutely unforgettable. If you love seeing overconfident people get reality checks that change their entire lives, smash that like button and subscribe, because what Judge Judy did next will blow your mind and restore your faith in real expertise. Karen Mitchell wasn't just another Facebook mom with opinions. She was a digital phenomenon who had built an empire on constitutional confidence she didn't actually possess. 3 years earlier, after a heated school board meeting about mask mandates, Karen discovered that posting angry constitutional quotes got massive engagement. Her first viral post about illegal government overreach exploded with 15,000 shares, and Karen felt the intoxicating rush of online authority. She was hooked. Within months, she'd created Constitutional Patriots United, positioning herself as the group's resident legal expert despite having zero formal legal education. Her bio proudly declared constitutional scholar and patriot mom with American flag emojis. Every morning, Karen would wake up and craft elaborate posts mixing half-remembered civics lessons with inflammatory rhetoric. She'd screenshot random constitutional amendments, add her own interpretation, and watch thousands of followers treat her words like gospel. Her audience grew hungry for her daily constitutional breakdowns of current events. When local news covered government decisions, Karen's followers would flood the comments demanding, "Get Constitutional Karen's take on this." She loved the attention, the authority, the way people called her brilliant. The more confident she became online, the more she believed her own hype. The fence dispute started innocently enough. Karen's elderly neighbor, 78-year-old Mrs. Patterson, had noticed that Karen's new privacy fence encroached 2 feet onto her property. Mrs. Patterson kindly knocked on Karen's door with the property survey, asking if they could resolve it neighborly. But Karen saw an opportunity for content. Instead of moving the fence, she took a photo of the sweet old woman and posted it on her page with the caption, "Government-backed property theft, happening to your constitutional Karen right now." She claimed Mrs. Patterson was part of a conspiracy to steal patriotic Americans' land rights. The post went viral in Karen's echo chamber. Thousands of followers raged about property seizure and constitutional violations. Karen felt vindicated and doubled down, posting daily updates about her legal battle against tyranny. She shared photos of the fence, screenshots of property laws she'd Googled, and long constitutional rants about the Fourth Amendment. Her followers donated over $8,000 to her legal defense fund through her PayPal link. Karen was making money from manufactured outrage, and it felt like validation of her expertise. But Mrs. Patterson wasn't intimidated by Facebook fury. The retired school principal quietly filed a proper legal complaint, requesting the fence be moved to the correct property line. When Karen received the court summons, she saw it as her moment to shine. This was her chance to prove to the world that she really was the constitutional expert her followers believed her to be. She announced on Facebook that she would represent herself in court and educate the corrupt legal system about real constitutional law. Karen spent weeks preparing, printing hundreds of constitutional quotes, researching property rights cases on Google, and practicing her arguments in the mirror. Her followers cheered her on, calling her brave and brilliant. She posted pre-court videos explaining how she would school the judge on constitutional property rights. The night before court, she went live to 12,000 viewers, promising to show America how a true patriot fights government overreach. She had no idea she'd been assigned to Judge Judy's courtroom. She had no idea her case would be televised. She had no idea that her constitutional expertise was about to be tested by one of the most knowledgeable legal minds on television. Karen walked into that courthouse believing she was David facing Goliath, ready to strike down the legal establishment with her Facebook-learned constitutional knowledge. She was about to discover that confidence without competence is just delusion waiting to be exposed. The moment Karen stepped into Judge Judy's courtroom, her confidence filled the space like cheap perfume. She strutted to the defendant's table, clutching her thick folder of printed Facebook posts, constitutional screenshots, and handwritten notes covered in highlighter marks. Judge Judy sat behind her bench reading the case file with the focused intensity of a surgeon reviewing x-rays. The bailiff called the court to order, and Karen actually smiled and waved at the cameras like she was accepting an award. She had no idea she was walking into a legal execution. Judge Judy looked up from the paperwork, her sharp eyes immediately sizing up Karen's overconfident demeanor. "This is a simple property dispute," the judge began, her voice crisp and businesslike. "Mrs. Patterson claims your fence is 2 feet onto her property. You claim constitutional protection. Let's hear your defense." Karen practically bounced out of her chair, her folder rustling with papers as she stood. This was her moment. This was what she'd trained for on Facebook for 3 years. "Your Honor," Karen announced with theatrical confidence, "this is not about a fence. This is about the systematic destruction of our constitutional property rights under the Fourth Amendment, which clearly states that government cannot engage in unreasonable seizures of private property without due process, and I have the constitutional right to defend my property against illegal government-backed theft." The words tumbled out in a rehearsed rush, exactly like her Facebook Live videos. She opened her folder and pulled out a laminated copy of the Bill of Rights, waving it like a magic wand. Judge Judy's eyebrow arched slightly, a warning sign that Karen completely missed. "Ma'am, are you represented by counsel?" the judge asked. Karen's chest puffed with pride. "No, Your Honor, I am representing myself because I have extensively studied constitutional law and I know my rights better than most lawyers." The courtroom was dead silent except for the sound of Karen shuffling through her papers, looking for her next constitutional quote. "I see," Judge Judy said slowly, her tone carrying the weight of 30 years on the bench. "And where exactly did you study constitutional law?" Karen's smile widened. This was the question she'd been waiting for. "I am self-educated through extensive research and I run a constitutional education group with over 50,000 members who rely on my legal expertise daily." She held up her phone, showing her Facebook page like it was a diploma from Harvard Law School. Judge Judy leaned forward slightly, her hands clasped on the bench. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "So let me understand this correctly. You believe your Facebook research qualifies you to lecture this court on constitutional law?" Karen nodded enthusiastically, completely oblivious to the trap being set. "Absolutely, Your Honor. The Constitution is not complicated when you actually read it, and most lawyers just complicate things to make money." The judge's lips pressed into a thin line. Karen had just insulted every legal professional in America, including the woman who was about to educate her on the difference between confidence and competence. Judge Judy set down her pen with deliberate precision, the small sound echoing through the silent courtroom like a gunshot. Her eyes locked onto Karen with the intensity of a laser beam, and when she spoke, her voice carried the authority of 3 decades dispensing justice. "Sweetheart," she began, her tone deceptively calm, "let me give you a real education since your Facebook university clearly failed you." Karen's confident smile flickered for just a moment, but she quickly recovered, clutching her laminated Bill of Rights like a security blanket. "First," Judge Judy continued, leaning back in her chair with the casual confidence of someone who had forgotten more law than Karen would ever know, "the Fourth Amendment protects against unreasonable searches and seizures by government agents. Your neighbor asking you to move your fence off her property is not a government seizure. It's called property law, which apparently wasn't covered in your social media curriculum. The judge's words sliced through Karen's constitutional armor like a hot knife through butter, but Karen wasn't ready to surrender. "But Your Honor," Karen interrupted, waving her papers frantically, "private property rights are guaranteed under the Constitution, and this is clearly an attempt to steal my constitutional property through legal intimidation." Judge Judy's eyebrow shot up so high it nearly reached her hairline. The audacity of this Facebook scholar trying to lecture her was almost entertaining. Almost. "Let me stop you right there. Constitutional Karen," Judge Judy said, using Karen's online nickname with surgical precision. "Since you want to quote the Constitution, let's talk about what it actually says versus what you think it says." The judge reached under her bench and pulled out her own copy of the Constitution, a well-worn leather-bound edition that had clearly seen decades of actual use. The Fifth Amendment states that private property cannot be taken for public use without just compensation. Your neighbor isn't taking your property for public use. She's asking you to remove your fence from her property, which you illegally placed there. Karen's face flushed red as she fumbled through her folder, searching for a comeback that didn't exist. But the 14th Amendment guarantees equal protection under the law, and this selective enforcement against patriotic Americans is clearly discriminatory government overreach designed to suppress constitutional rights, she stammered. Reading directly from one of her printed Facebook posts, Judge Judy actually chuckled, a sound that sent chills down Karen's spine. "Oh honey, you just proved you have no idea what equal protection means. The 14th Amendment prevents the government from denying equal protection of the laws to any person. This has absolutely nothing to do with your fence dispute. You're not being discriminated against because you're patriotic. You're being sued because you built a fence on someone else's property." The courtroom was so quiet you could hear Karen's heart pounding. Her constitutional confidence was crumbling in real time, but her ego wouldn't let her retreat. "Well, what about my due process rights?" she asked desperately, pulling out another highlighted printout. "The government can't just force me to tear down my fence without proper legal procedures." Judge Judy stood up, her full authority radiating through the courtroom like heat from a furnace. "Let me explain due process to you since your Facebook education clearly skipped that chapter. Due process means you get notice and an opportunity to be heard before the government deprives you of life, liberty, or property. You got notice when your neighbor showed you the property survey. You're getting your opportunity to be heard right now in this courtroom. This is due process, you constitutional scholar." Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Every constitutional argument she'd prepared, every Facebook post she'd memorized, every confident claim she'd made to her 50,000 followers was being systematically destroyed by someone who actually understood the law. "But I have the right to defend my property," she whispered weakly, her voice barely audible. "You absolutely have the right to defend your property," Judge Judy emphasized, pointing directly at Karen. "But sweetheart, that fence is not on your property. It's on Mrs. Patterson's property, which makes you a trespasser, not a constitutional patriot. The fact that you've convinced 50,000 people on Facebook that you understand constitutional law doesn't change the basic fact that you built a fence on land you don't own." The judge sat back down, her point made with devastating clarity. Karen stood there holding her folder of useless Facebook printouts, her constitutional expertise exposed as nothing more than confident ignorance wrapped in patriotic rhetoric. The woman who had spent 3 years teaching constitutional law to thousands of followers had just been educated by a real judge who actually knew what she was talking about. The worst part for Karen was the slowly dawning realization that this entire humiliation was being broadcast to millions of viewers, who would soon know the truth about constitutional Karen's expertise. Karen's face turned 17, shades of red as the weight of her public humiliation began to sink in. Her hands trembled as she shuffled through her now worthless folder of Facebook printouts, desperately searching for some constitutional loophole that would save her dignity. The camera zoomed in on her panicked expression as she realized that her entire online persona was collapsing in real time on national television. "But Your Honor," she stammered, her voice cracking with desperation, "I've been teaching constitutional law to thousands of people for years. I can't be wrong about everything." Judge Judy's response was swift and merciless. "Sweetheart, teaching constitutional law requires actually knowing constitutional law. What you've been doing is spreading constitutional fiction to people who don't know any better. That's not education, that's misinformation with a patriotic bow on top." The judge's words hit Karen like physical blows, each syllable stripping away another layer of her carefully constructed expertise. As Judge Judy delivered her final constitutional lesson, something extraordinary was happening in living rooms across America. Viewers were grabbing their phones, frantically typing, sharing, and commenting faster than the show's producers had ever seen. The moment Judge Judy said Facebook University clearly failed you, social media exploded. Within 60 seconds, the Facebook University was trending. Within 5 minutes, Trigger Constitutional Karen had over 10,000 posts. The clip hadn't even finished airing, but it was already going viral at lightning speed. Karen's meltdown was spectacular and complete. She started hyperventilating, fanning herself with the Bill of Rights she'd laminated for protection. "This can't be happening," she whispered to herself, but the microphones picked up every word. "My followers trust me. I have a reputation. I can't be wrong." The irony was lost on her that she was having her breakdown while holding the very document she'd been misinterpreting for 3 years. Judge Judy watched Karen's public unraveling with the detached professionalism of someone who'd seen every type of courtroom breakdown imaginable. "Ma'am, your reputation was built on quicksand. Today that quicksand just got wet." The judge's final words were delivered with surgical precision, designed to end Karen's delusions once and for all. The courtroom erupted in gasps and nervous laughter as Karen slumped into her chair, defeated and destroyed. Her folder of constitutional research scattered across the floor like the remnants of her credibility. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly neighbor, looked almost sad watching Karen's complete breakdown. Even she felt sorry for the woman who had turned a simple fence dispute into a constitutional crisis. Outside the courtroom, something unprecedented was happening. The show's social media team was watching their notifications explode. The official Judge Judy Facebook page was gaining thousands of followers per minute. Twitter was on fire with legal experts praising the judge's educational smackdown. TikTok users were already creating reaction videos. The internet had found its new favorite moment, and Karen's constitutional expertise had become the punchline of the year. Karen sat in stunned silence, realizing that her moment of television triumph had become her moment of complete and total humiliation, broadcast to millions of people who would never let her forget it. Within hours of the show airing, Karen's constitutional meltdown had become the internet's obsession. TikTok exploded with teenagers recreating her most ridiculous moments, holding up laminated copies of the Constitution while dramatically declaring, "I know my rights better than most lawyers." The audio clips of Karen's voice became viral soundbites, with users adding them to videos of people confidently doing things they clearly didn't understand. One TikTok showing a toddler teaching calculus to college students using Karen's audio got 15 million views in 24 hours. Twitter was absolutely ruthless. Facebook University became a trending topic for 3 straight days, with users sharing their own stories of people who confused Google searches with graduate degrees. Legal professionals couldn't resist joining the pile-on. Harvard law professors were quote tweeting the clip with crying laughing emojis. The American Bar Association's official Twitter account posted a GIF of Judge Judy with the caption, "This is how you handle constitutional misinformation." Even retired Supreme Court justices were sharing the video, praising Judge Judy's patience in dealing with armchair constitutional scholars. The meme machine went into overdrive. Image macros flooded, Reddit showing Karen's confident face next to actual constitutional lawyers with captions like, "Constitutional expertise. Expectations versus reality." Her laminated Bill of Rights became a symbol of fake expertise everywhere. Amazon reported a bizarre spike in laminating machine sales as people jokingly created Facebook University diplomas. Someone created a fake course catalog for Facebook University School of Constitutional Law featuring classes like Advanced Constitutional Misinterpretation and How to Confuse Confidence with Competence. And lawyers began using Karen's clips as teaching tools. Law schools incorporated her constitutional mistakes into their curriculum as examples of what not to do. Constitutional law professors showed the Judge Judy clip on the first day of class, telling students, "This is why we actually study the law, instead of just reading it once and declaring ourselves experts." Legal aid societies used the video in public education campaigns about the importance of actual legal representation. Karen's Facebook empire crumbled overnight. Her Constitutional Patriots United group lost 30,000 members in 48 hours. Former followers flooded her page with Judge Judy memes and screenshots of real constitutional law explanations. The remaining loyal followers tried to defend her, claiming the whole thing was a setup, but their voices were drowned out by an avalanche of ridicule. Multiple followers demanded refunds of their donations to her legal defense fund. Some threatened to report her for fraud, claiming she'd taken money under false pretenses. Meanwhile, Mrs. Patterson became an unexpected internet hero. Memes portrayed the sweet elderly teacher as the ultimate constitutional scholar who defeated Karen with nothing but actual facts and a property survey. Someone started a GoFundMe to buy Mrs. Patterson flowers for surviving Constitutional Karen's constitutional crisis, which raised $12,000 in donations from people who appreciated her patience with her delusional neighbor. The internet had spoken. Karen's 15 minutes of fame had become a lifetime sentence of humiliation, and Judge Judy's constitutional lesson had become the gold standard for shutting down overconfident ignorance with actual expertise. The aftermath of Karen's constitutional catastrophe created ripples that extended far beyond one embarrassing television moment. Within a week, constitutional Karen had become synonymous with overconfident ignorance everywhere. Her name was being used in academic papers about the dangers of social media misinformation. Psychology professors cited her case as a textbook example of the Dunning-Kruger effect, where people with limited knowledge overestimate their expertise. Karen had unwittingly become a cautionary tale taught in universities across America. Judge Judy's masterful takedown became required viewing in journalism schools studying how to fact-check social media experts. Media literacy courses used Karen's Facebook posts as examples of how confident presentation can mask complete ignorance. The clip was translated into dozens of languages, with international legal experts praising Judge Judy's patient dismantling of constitutional fiction. Karen's humiliation had gone global, serving as a warning about the difference between real expertise and internet confidence. The legal community embraced Judge Judy's lesson as a rallying cry against pseudo-legal experts proliferating on social media. Bar associations began running campaigns featuring the clip with messages like, "Real legal advice comes from real lawyers, not Facebook posts." Court clerks reported a noticeable decrease in pro-SE litigants quoting irrelevant constitutional amendments, suggesting Karen's public education had actually improved legal proceedings nationwide. Karen herself disappeared from social media entirely. Her Facebook page went dark, her Constitutional Patriots United group was disbanded, and her PayPal legal defense fund was quietly refunded to donors. Neighbors reported seeing her moving out of the house with the infamous fence, presumably to start fresh somewhere her constitutional expertise wasn't quite so well known. The fence was moved to the correct property line, and Mrs. Patterson planted beautiful roses where Karen's constitutional crisis once stood. Judge Judy's legacy was enhanced by the viral moment. Legal scholars praised her ability to educate the public about constitutional law, while simultaneously demonstrating the importance of actual legal training. The clip became the most watched Judge Judy segment in television history, proving that audiences craved real expertise over manufactured authority. The lesson resonated far beyond constitutional law. Karen's story became a powerful reminder that confidence without competence is just delusion waiting to be exposed. In an era of social media experts and internet authorities, Judge Judy had delivered the ultimate reality check about the difference between actual knowledge and performative expertise. If Judge Judy's legendary constitutional lesson inspired you to value real expertise over social media confidence, slam that like button, subscribe to our channel, and comment below what your favorite moment was. Join our membership for exclusive legal education content, and let's celebrate the difference between real knowledge and Facebook fiction together. No one in Judge Judy's courtroom expected history to be made that morning, least of all the woman who walked in clutching a crumpled stack of Facebook printouts like they were sacred scripture. She called herself a constitutional warrior, a suburban mom who believed a handful of online memes had armed her with more power than decades of legal training. Her name was Karen, and she wasn't just there to fight a case. She was there to expose the system, or so she thought. What she didn't know, what no one in the room knew, was that she was about to awaken the one person in America who never loses a battle of law, Judge Judy. Before we dive into this incredible case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are around the world. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. It started with a single sentence. Karen rose from her seat chin high and announced that she was refusing to answer any questions because, as she put it, the Constitution gives me the right to remain a free citizen beyond this court's reach. The air shifted. The gallery froze mid-breath. Judy didn't flinch, not yet. She simply tilted her head and stared, the way a hawk stares at something that hasn't realized its prey. Karen kept talking, piling misquoted amendments and imaginary clauses on top of one another like bricks made of dust. Every word she spoke dug her deeper. She thought she was climbing out. She was actually building the perfect stage for her public unraveling. Then Judy blinked once and quietly set down her pen. That was the moment everything changed. The silence that followed was unnatural, thick, almost electric, like the world itself had paused to listen. Karen smiled, thinking she had won. But Judy's eyes were saying something different. They said, "You just triggered 27 years of fury." What came next would not just be a courtroom correction. It would be a public dissection, broadcast to millions, replayed in classrooms, and remembered as the moment Judge Judy turned a Facebook argument into the most legendary law lesson in TV history. For a long moment, Judge Judy didn't move. The courtroom sat frozen, the air humming with a tension that made people forget to breathe. Karen mistook the silence for victory. She even smiled, her lips curling in the smug way people do when they believe they've just outsmarted the world. But Judy was studying her, calm, calculating, and deadly still, like a storm measuring where to strike first. Then Judy spoke, not with anger, but with an icy calm that sliced sharper than a shout. "Do you know what you just said?" she asked, her voice flat, almost gentle. "You just claimed this court has no authority over you, while sitting inside it." Karen blinked, confused, and that hesitation gave Judy all the confirmation she needed. This wasn't just arrogance. This was something worse, a woman who had come to dismantle the idea of law itself, armed with nothing but Facebook slogans and the blind confidence of ignorance. And for a split second, everyone saw it too. The gallery's murmurs swelled. The bailiff shifted uneasily. Even the court clerk's fingers hovered above the keyboard like she was recording history instead of testimony. Because this was no longer about who was right or wrong in a petty dispute. This had become a collision between truth and chaos. Judy leaned back in her chair, folding her hands. "You're not just challenging me," she said. "You're challenging the foundation of this courtroom, and if you succeed, every person who thinks the internet makes them invincible will follow you in here tomorrow." That was the first time Karen's smile faltered. The weight of the words landed slowly, like bricks dropping one by one. Judy's eyes swept the courtroom, then locked back on her. "Understand this," she said softly. "If the rules mean nothing, then justice dies. And when justice dies, everything dies with it. Order, truth, accountability, fairness. You think this is just about you. It isn't. It's about whether law still matters at all." The room went deathly still. Karen tried to speak, but her voice cracked on the first word. Judy cut her off with one sharp motion of her hand. "No, listen." And for the first time Karen did, because the stakes had changed. What began as a petty courtroom squabble had now become something much larger, a battle for the soul of the system itself. The spectators felt it. The bailiff felt it. And beyond those courtroom walls, millions were beginning to feel it too. Because while no one knew it yet, the entire exchange was being live-streamed from a reporter's phone in the back row. Within minutes, snippets of Karen's defiance were already racing through social media with captions like, "Mom destroys judge," and "Constitutional rights argument shuts down court." For a brief, dangerous moment, the internet believed her. Hashtags ignited, threads filled with cheering comments from people convinced that Karen had somehow outsmarted the justice system. Viewers who had only seen her opening words hailed her as a hero. But the full story hadn't unfolded yet. They hadn't seen the trap she had set for herself, and they hadn't seen the quiet fury building behind Judy's steady stare. In living rooms across the country, families began gathering around screens to watch the feed. In break rooms, people whispered over coffee. Even law students at nearby colleges paused lectures to stream it. Because deep down, everyone sensed it. Something massive was about to happen, and then Judy spoke again, this time for everyone, not just for Karen. Her voice was clear, cold, and sharp enough to pierce through the courtroom walls and out into the world. "The Constitution," Judy said, "is not your personal permission slip to wreak havoc in a courtroom." Her words cracked through the air like lightning. "You keep saying you have rights, as though that erases your responsibilities. It doesn't. Rights do not cancel rules. Rights live because rules protect them. Without rules, your so-called rights are just noise, and noise has never won a single case in my court." The gallery gasped. Even the bailiff's mouth twitched. It was the first real hit, and it landed like a thunderclap. Karen's face flushed. She gripped her stack of printed Facebook posts tighter, as if paper could stop what was coming, but Judy wasn't done. "You walked in here quoting amendments you've never read," she continued. "You claim freedom while ignoring the structure that gives it meaning. The Constitution does not make you untouchable. It makes you accountable. And if that scares you, good. It should." Each word was measured, deliberate, like she was placing stones on a grave. Somewhere outside the courtroom, news editors were already cutting clips, slapping headlines on them, feeding the frenzy. Within an hour, this case would become a wildfire of opinions, outrage, and chaos. And if Judy failed, if Karen's circus act went unchallenged, millions of people would leave believing that courts can be toppled by hashtags and memes. Judy saw it. She always saw further than the courtroom walls. That was why her expression hardened into something cold and ancient, something carved from decades of defending the law from erosion, because this wasn't just Karen on trial anymore. This was order on trial, and Judy was about to make sure it survived. Karen did not retreat. If anything, Judy's words seemed to ignite something reckless in her. She straightened her spine, clutched her stack of papers like a shield, and smiled, not the smile of someone confident, but the fragile grin of someone too far out to swim back. "With all due respect, Judge," she said, her voice trembling but loud, "you don't get to tell me what my rights are. The Constitution is above this court." "It's above you." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Even the court reporter's fingers paused over her keys. Judy's eyes narrowed, though she didn't speak. She simply watched, and that silence rattled Karen more than any shouted objection ever could. Karen plunged on, desperate to fill the silence. She fanned her papers in the air, printouts of Facebook posts with blurry amendments circled in red, hashtags scrawled in the margins. "I've done my research. This court has no jurisdiction over a free citizen of the sovereign United States," she declared, mimicking phrases she barely understood. "This is tyranny, and I will not submit to tyranny." The bailiff stepped forward slightly, his posture sharpening. Judy raised one finger and he froze. The room seemed to tilt. Karen mistook Judy's stillness for surrender. She pushed harder. "You think you can scare me with your robe and your gavel, but this country was built on resisting people like you. My great-grandfather fought for these freedoms. You can't take them from me just because you don't like what I'm saying." Her voice cracked on the last word, but the defiance remained. Judy leaned forward just enough that the light caught her eyes. "Are you finished?" she asked quietly. Karen opened her mouth to answer, but no sound came. For the first time, she faltered. The room was so silent they could hear the clock tick behind the bench. "Because if you're not," Judy continued, "you should understand what happens next. Every word you say digs the hole deeper. Every interruption makes your argument weaker. And every second you spend trying to burn this courtroom down only proves why it stands stronger than you." Karen blinked, her lips parting like she wanted to speak again, but Judy's voice swept over her like steel. "You came here thinking you could rewrite the law with Facebook posts," Judy said, eyes locked on hers. "But this is not Facebook. This is a court of law. And in my court, truth speaks louder than fear." Karen's hands trembled. The papers fluttered like feathers slipping from her grip. Somewhere in the gallery, someone whispered, "She's done." They were wrong. She wasn't done, not yet, because Karen's pride would not let her surrender quietly, and Judy knew it. She was letting Karen dig deeper, because only when the hole was deep enough would Judy bury her argument inside it. Judy finally moved, slowly, deliberately. She leaned forward, folding her hands on the bench as the entire courtroom held its breath. Her voice, when it came, was not loud, but it was laced with the kind of power that doesn't need volume to be felt. "Let me teach you something," she said. "Because clearly Facebook didn't." Karen blinked. "The Constitution," Judy continued, "protects your right to speak. It does not protect your right to interrupt. It protects your right to disagree, not to disobey. And it guarantees you due process, which you are actively trying to set on fire with every word out of your mouth." Each sentence landed like a gavel strike. You are not above the law. You are inside it. You are protected by it. But if you reject it, you don't become free. You become lost. And nothing, not your printouts, not your hashtags, not your entitlement, will save you from the consequences of that choice. Karen's mouth hung open. "Your rights," Judy said, her tone sharpening to a blade, "do not make you untouchable. They make you responsible. And right now, you are proving why rules exist. To protect this courtroom from becoming chaos in heels." The room erupted. Gasps, stunned laughter, even applause from the gallery. Karen froze. Her bravado collapsed. The papers sagged in her hand like wilting flowers, and just like that, the internet found its moment. Phones rose. Clips flew. Within minutes, Judy's words were everywhere. The lesson, the fury, the precision. Karen had wanted to go viral. She just hadn't expected to go down in flames to get there. By the time Karen stumbled out of Judge Judy's courtroom, the moment had already escaped her hands and entered history. What she didn't know as she clutched her crumpled papers and stormed past the marble columns was that the world outside had stopped spinning to watch her fall. The clip of Judy's dismantling had detonated across the internet like a thunderclap. Someone in the back row had live-streamed it. Someone else had clipped Judy's words into 15-second bursts, each one sharper than the last. Rights do not cancel rules. The Constitution protects you from tyranny, not from consequences. This is not Facebook. This is a court of law. Those phrases hit the web like fire on dry grass. Within an hour, they were on TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels. Within 2 hours, Dr. Lawlesson and My Karen vs. Judy were trending simultaneously in 6 countries. Legal commentators scrambled to respond. CNN ran a breaking banner. Judge Judy goes viral after schooling Facebook mom on constitutional law. Fox News replayed the moment on loop, one host saying, "I've practiced law for 20 years, and I've never seen a takedown that surgical." Law professors began sharing the clip with their students. One constitutional scholar tweeted, "This is the clearest public explanation of the difference between rights and courtroom procedure I've ever seen," and it came from Judge Judy. Even the American Bar Association issued a statement praising the exchange as a rare moment when courtroom television fulfilled its highest purpose, educating the public. Meanwhile, the memes were merciless. One showed Karen holding her Facebook printouts like sacred scrolls with the caption, "She thought she brought the Constitution. She brought paper cuts." Another showed Judy with laser eyes and the words, "Defending democracy since 1996. By evening, Karen's own Facebook account had been locked down. The posts she had once proudly waved in court were flooded with laughing emojis and comments quoting Judy's lines back at her. "Rights don't cancel rules. Karen, this is not Facebook. You just got schooled by America's grandma." But outside the jokes, something deeper was happening. Churches, classrooms, and living rooms were playing Judy's words not for laughs but for lessons. Parents sat their teenagers down to watch. Teachers opened class with the clip. A civics professor told her students, "This is why we have rules, so that freedom has structure. Watch what happens when someone forgets that." The clip hit every demographic at once. Older viewers said it reminded them of why they trusted Judy in the first place. Younger viewers, who had only seen her as a meme, suddenly saw her as something else. A protector, a teacher, maybe even a last defense against chaos. Talk shows debated it. Podcasts dissected it. Late-night hosts joked about it while admitting, "She made better legal points than half the senators I've interviewed." And in the center of it all, Judy stayed silent. She didn't give interviews. She didn't post on social media. She didn't gloat. She simply went home that night, fed her dogs, and went to bed, while the world she had just shaken still echoed from coast to coast. Outside her studio courtroom the next morning, fans lined the sidewalk holding signs. "In Judy we trust. Law, loudness. Thank you for defending the truth." News helicopters circled overhead. Law students camped on the steps just to glimpse her arriving. Even government officials weighed in. A state attorney general posted the clip with the caption, "This is how you protect the law, not by screaming louder, but by standing firmer." Within 48 hours, the video had reached 70 million views across platforms. A single sentence from Judy, "Rights do not make you untouchable. They make you responsible," had become the most replayed legal quote of the decade. But while the internet roared, Karen disappeared. She deleted her account. Friends unfollowed her. Former supporters who had once cheered her posts about freedom now used her name as a warning. In comment sections, her face had become shorthand for self-destruction. "Don't go full Karen." The public's fascination wasn't just about her downfall. It was about what Judy had defended, because in a time when noise was often mistaken for truth, Judy had reminded everyone what real authority looked like. Not loud, not flashy, not cruel, just unshakable. Parents whispered it to their children as they tucked them in. Rules protect your rights. Don't forget that. In office break rooms, co-workers replayed the moment like a sporting victory. "She didn't just win," one man said, shaking his head. "She saved the idea of law on live TV." Even rivals praised her. A notoriously combative defense attorney told the press, "I've fought against this woman's rulings for decades. Tonight I'm glad she's on our side." And somewhere in the quiet of her dressing room, Judy watched none of it. She was reading case notes for the next day, as though she hadn't just become the most quoted jurist in America. For millions who had watched it unfold, though something permanent had shifted, this wasn't just entertainment anymore. It was history, and for the first time in years, America seemed to agree on something. Judge Judy was right. While the world replayed her words in a frenzy, Judge Judy sat alone in her private chambers, away from the cameras, away from the applause. The courtroom had emptied hours ago, yet the echoes of the day still hummed in her bones. She removed her black robe with slow, careful hands, folding it as though it were not just fabric but the weight of an oath. Outside, the studio lights had gone dark. But inside her mind, the moment replayed, not the cheers, not the headlines, but the way Karen's voice had trembled when her defiance finally cracked. For the first time all day, Judy allowed herself to exhale. People always saw her as invincible, the unbreakable judge with the razor tongue and iron will. They never saw the part of her that questioned, quietly after the noise faded, not whether she was right and she knew the law and the law had been on her side, but whether she had gone too far, whether the lesson had come wrapped in too much fire and not enough grace. She thought about Karen, not the caricature the internet had turned her into, but the woman underneath it all. A mother, probably exhausted, probably lonely, someone who had gone searching for belonging in the loudest corners of the digital world and mistaken noise for truth. Judy had seen it too many times before. Good people corroded by bad information until they didn't know where they ended, and the lies began. And that, more than her arrogance, was what had made Judy's chest ache long after the courtroom applause faded. Because she hadn't wanted to humiliate her. She had wanted to protect her, and everyone like her, from the cliff she hadn't even known she was walking toward. Judy sat at her desk, running her finger along the edge of an old photograph. It was her, decades younger, standing in a cramped Bronx family court. She could still smell the cracked linoleum, hear the shouting parents, the frightened children clinging to stuffed animals. She remembered being 24, raw and untested, trying to hold order together with nothing but a borrowed gavel and sheer force of will. Back then the chaos had felt endless and louder than reason, faster than justice could run. She remembered the night she almost quit. The case had been ugly, a teenager lost in the system, tossed between foster homes like luggage, forgotten by every adult who was supposed to care. When Judy ruled to protect her, the backlash was vicious. The press called her reckless. Politicians demanded she be removed. She had gone home that night shaking, wondering if it was worth it, this endless fight to hold. The line between law and anarchy while everyone hurled stones from both sides. Her father had been the one who stopped her. She could still hear his voice as clear as if he were standing behind her now. "Judith," he had said gently, "the law doesn't need you to be liked. It needs you to be unshakable. If you are soft, the chaos will eat you. If you are fair, the chaos will fear you." That night, she had decided who she would be, and she had never looked back. Even now, after decades of rulings, after millions of viewers and countless cases, that memory lived inside her like a compass, reminding her why she did this. It wasn't to win, it was to protect. And yet tonight, she felt the weight of how much that protection sometimes cost. She thought again of Karen's face as the facade cracked. The flash of confusion, then panic, then something that almost looked like grief. Not grief for losing a case, grief for losing a worldview. Judy knew how shattering that was. She had seen it before. Grown men in tears when they realized the law wasn't their weapon but their mirror. Women collapsing when the fantasy of being untouchable gave way to the reality of accountability. Judy whispered to the empty room, "I hope she understands someday." She knew the internet wouldn't. The internet never wanted nuance. It wanted fireworks, not aftermaths. It would crown her the hero and Karen the villain because that was easier than asking how things got this broken. But Judy knew better. She knew how fragile people became when they felt invisible, how quickly fear hardened into defiance when no one listened. That was the secret no one saw, not even the millions who adored her. Judy didn't relish destroying arrogance. She grieved the loneliness that grew underneath it. She leaned back in her chair, eyes tracing the rows of old law books that lined her shelves like soldiers. She remembered the first time she opened them, how the pages had smelled like dust and discipline, how the words had felt like armor. They still did. But some days, even armor felt heavy. She had spent her whole life defending the structure that made fairness possible, and tonight, she wondered how many more battles she had left in her. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. It was one of her longtime clerks, carrying a mug of tea. "Thought you could use this?" he said gently, setting it on her desk. Judy smiled faintly. "Thank you." He hesitated at the door. "You know, you did the right thing today." She nodded but didn't answer, because right didn't always feel good. When he left, Judy picked up the mug and stared at the rising steam. She thought of the young lawyers who would study today's clip, the parents who would replay it for their children, the strangers who would cheer like it was a boxing match. And then she thought of Karen again, where she was tonight, what she was feeling, whether anyone was holding her while the internet tore her apart. Judy knew she couldn't control that. She had done her duty, and duty was rarely warm, but quietly, deep down, she hoped Karen would find her way back from the noise, back to something real, something solid, something true. Because that, more than winning, was what Judy wanted, not to break people, to bring them home. She placed her hand gently on the folded robe at the edge of her desk. It wasn't just cloth. It was the burden she had carried longer than anyone ever saw, heavier than anyone ever guessed. And as the world outside roared with applause, Judy sat in silence, hoping that somewhere out there, one woman who had walked into her courtroom full of fury might one day understand the truth that had always guided her. The law isn't here to crush you. It's here to catch you before you fall. The next morning, Karen returned, not to fight but to listen. She stood quietly in the hallway, no papers in her hands, no slogans on her lips. When Judy entered, Karen whispered, "I didn't understand, but I do now." Judy only nodded. No gloating, no grin. Just a silent acknowledgement that maybe the law had done its job. The case ended with a single gavel tap. No shouting, no spectacle, only stillness. And yet the moment reverberated far louder than all the chaos that came before it. Clips of Judy's final words flooded every platform. The law isn't here to crush you, it's here to catch you before you fall. Families replayed it at dinner tables, teachers played it in classrooms, even strangers on city streets paused, watching with quiet respect. Karen walked out of the courtroom humbled, her head bowed while Judy remained on the bench, unmoved, unshaken, and unforgettable. And as the doors closed, one truth echoed through millions of screens across the world. Justice had spoken, and the world had listened. If this moment reminded you why truth still matters, comment "Justice wins" below, and subscribe to see more legendary courtroom moments.